The following podcast may not be for all listeners. Listener discretion is advised.
What if I told you that one of Hollywood's most beloved actors has a father who is a hitman? Not the kind you see in the movies, but a real one. A man whose life reads like a crime novel gone wrong. Some fathers leave their children with a legacy of bedtime stories and baseball games. Charles Harrelson left his children with something else entirely. A name that would forever be linked to murder for hire. In this episode, we explore the dark world of Charles Harrelson, a contract killer and father to Woody Harrelson. The year was 1938. In the sweltering heat of Texas, a baby named Charles Harrelson took his first breath. No one knew then that this seemingly ordinary child would grow up to cast a long, dark shadow. As an adult, marriage came easily to Charles, maybe too easily. 4 women shared his name over the years. And from one of these unions came 3 sons, Brett, Jordan, and Woody. Yes, that Woody Harrelson, the same one you've seen lighting up Hollywood screens, started life as the son of a hitman. On the surface, Charles Harrelson sold encyclopedias door to door, a slice of 1960s Americana complete with a briefcase and a rehearsed smile. Behind that smile lurked a gambler's mind, always calculating odds in the California sun. But selling knowledge wasn't enough. In 1960, Charles traded his salesman's pitch for a gun, earning himself 5 years behind bars for armed robbery. By 1968, he'd walked away from his family home, his wife, and 3 little boys who still waited at the windows for their father's return. That same year, the darkness in Charles grew deeper. For a mere $1,500, barely worth a gambler's bet, he allegedly took his first life. Alan Harry Berg, a carpet salesman who shared Charles' appetite for gambling. He was found dead in Texas. Berg's brother David would later write about the killing, indicating that a price tag was put on his brother's life that wouldn't even buy a decent used car. The last drink Alan Berg would ever have sat half finished on a bar that night. When the phone rang, the bartender called him over. A woman's voice on the line promised the pleasure of sexual favors. Berg walked out of the bar into the Texas night, following the trail of a honey-coated trap. Some whispered it was about vengeance, payback for his father's loose tongue about an old employee. Others knew better. They'd seen Alan Berg shake when his gambling debts came due. 6 long months passed before anyone found him. 31 years of life ended in a Texas ditch, where rain and dirt had tried to wash away the truth. But ditches keep secrets better than people. And Alan Berg's story was far from over. His death would become just another card in Charles Harrelson's growing deck of darkness. Charles Harrelson was tried for the murder of Alan Berg, but justice has a funny way of slipping through the cracks. On September 22, 1970, Charles Harrelson walked out of a courtroom a free man. Due to insufficient evidence, Berg's murder hung in the air like smoke that wouldn't clear. The jury had spoken. But freedom for Charles wasn't an invitation to change course. Just months after his acquittal, death came calling again. This time, it wore the face of Degelia, a 30-year-old wealthy grain broker. His last conversation was with his bookkeeper, Jimmy Horn. The two crossed paths in a parking lot that evening. Jimmy Horn would invite Sam to dine with him, but Sam declined as he waited for someone regarding a potential grain purchase. The clock ticked past business hours on July 11th, 1968, in Hidalgo County, Texas. Another ordinary day was about to turn extraordinary. That night, Charles Harrelson and Jerry Watkins picked up Sam Degelia, like old friends might. But friends don't lead friends to their death. The Texas night swallowed another soul, and Charles Harrelson added another to his growing collection. Jimmy Horn returned from dining and found Sam's empty car in the parking lot still. An extensive search ensued for Sam, as it was believed he was missing and quite possibly a victim of foul play. Money makes monsters of men. Pete Scamardo proved this when he looked at his best friend since the second grade and saw only $sign. He took the $2,000 hit out on his grade school friend, Sam Degelia. The two had been longtime friends and longtime business partners. Scamardo is in deep debt and trafficking heroin with Harrelson. Pete and Sam, being lifelong friends, were also beneficiaries of each other's life insurance policies. A $100,000 life insurance policy can turn playground memories to ash, especially when one is drowning in debt. The math was simple and cold as winter. $2,000 to Charles Harrelson, a bargain price for murder. $50,000 in unpaid debts that would vanish with Sam Degelia's last breath. The rest, pure profit. Pete Scamardo had reduced his childhood friend's life to a balance sheet. It's funny how friendship works. All those years of shared secrets, borrowed lunch money, and schoolyard promises, destroyed by a handshake deal with a killer. Sam Degelia never knew his best friend was counting the days until his death. Sam's body was discovered later in July of 1968 in a pump house. He had been missing for 6 days. He was found with 2 bullet holes in him and was identified based on his wallet and the ring he wore. Justice sometimes whispers when it should scream. Pete Scamardo, who traded a lifetime of friendship for a stack of blood money, walked away with just 7 years of probation. The man who planned his best friend's murder never spent a single night behind bars. Charles Harrelson's first trial dissolved into mistrial, another dance with Lady Luck. But 1973 finally brought the music to a stop. The verdict came down guilty. The sentence, 15 years. Fair price for a man's life? Well, the system seemed to think so. But even 15 years proved too much to ask. In 1978, after just 5 years, Charles Harrelson stepped back into the Texas sun. His good behavior behind bars earning him an early ticket to freedom. Some men learned their lesson in prison, and others just learned to wait. For Charles Harrelson, freedom wasn't an ending. It was just an intermission before his darkest act yet. It wasn't long after his 1978 parole, he married Joanne Harrelson and had intermingled with his old drug smuggling bosses, the Chagra brothers of El Paso, Texas. Some killers have a line they won't cross. Charles Harrelson was about to prove he didn't. This contract wasn't for another desperate gambler or betrayed business partner. The target was much bigger. The brothers weren't looking to erase a debt or collect insurance money. They wanted to silence someone more powerful, a United States district judge. The stakes had changed. Street murders and back alley deals were one thing. but targeting a federal judge? That was dancing with the devil himself. Charles Harrelson was about to step onto a stage where the spotlight burns hot and the shadows run deep, where killers don't just face prison time, they face history. On a quiet May morning in 1979, a gunshot rang out in a San Antonio parking lot when death came calling. Judge John H. Wood Jr. was walking to his car outside of his townhouse, probably thinking about his morning docket. They would later call him Maximum John, a nickname earned from the harsh sentences he handed down to drug dealers. It was a title that would cost him his life. Jamal Chagra had heard enough about those maximum sentences. The El Paso drug dealer had a date with the judge's courtroom looming, but he decided to cancel it permanently. Once again, Charles Harrelson proved himself a willing triggerman, trading life for blood money. The parking lot of a townhouse complex became the scene of something America hadn't witnessed in over a century: the assassination of a federal judge. This wasn't some back alley hit or barroom setup. This shot would echo within its surroundings, a bullet that crossed a line from which there would be no coming back. Charles Harrelson was apprehended in September of 1980 after a 6-hour police standoff. Charles was reportedly high on cocaine during this arrest and had threatened to commit suicide. He claimed he killed the judge as well as John F. Kennedy. The FBI did not believe Harrelson's story of JFK's assassination, and he was sentenced to 2 life terms in prison. In addition to Harrelson being charged with murder, his wife Joanne was charged with providing the murder weapon, and Elizabeth Chagra, the wife of the drug smuggler Jimmy Chagra, was charged with delivering payment for the hit to Harrelson's wife, Joanne. Jimmy Chagra was arrested for being the mastermind behind the horrific crime, and Joe Chagra for conspiracy. Charles Harrelson didn't stay quiet for long. On July 4th, 1995, he attempted to escape from the Atlanta Federal Penitentiary with 2 other inmates, using a makeshift rope to escape. The attempt failed as they were shot at from the tower. Harrelson was transferred to a supermax prison in Marion, Illinois, where he spent the rest of his life. Charles Harrelson passed away on March 15th, 2007, at age 68 from a heart attack. At 12 years old, Woody Harrelson discovered what kind of man his father was. Not through family stories or old photographs, but from a car radio broadcasting news of a murder trial. Learning that your father trades in death instead of bedtime stories has to be pretty rough. Most people would have locked that door and thrown away the key, but something pulled Woody back to his father, Charles, in the 1980s. Maybe it was curiosity or that stubborn, bone-deep need to know where you come from. With his wife Laura Louie standing beside him, Woody chose the harder path, loving someone society had deemed unlovable. Prison visiting rooms became their family reunion spot. Father and son separated by bulletproof glass and bad choices, building whatever kind of relationship they could salvage from the wreckage of this past. It wasn't the stuff of Hallmark cards, but it was theirs. A testament to how love sometimes grows in the darkest places, like flowers pushing through concrete. It is here, my dark friends, where I leave you. Remember, darkness always lurks within you.